Hello and welcome to the Forestry Journal Forestry Briefing, your regular roundup and discussion of the latest news from the world of forestry. I'm Forestry Journal editor John McNee, joined as always by Deputy Editor Jack Haugh. And today we are recording in the Forestry Journal podcast studio, state-of-the-art, so state-of-the-art that it's not actually really ready for recording. And I don't know how often we're going to find ourselves in here because I already miss being out in the wilds.
Yeah, I think in our head it was going to be all set up. This is a brand new studio that's shared by us and some of our sister territories. We thought it'd be set up, there'd be cameras and mics and boom bash bash, but there isn't. We are just on our phone as usual. We've had to put this on the screen. We've got some pillows up there to keep the brightness down, so yeah, bish bash.
Probably back in the woods for the next next edition.
It's actually easier filming there, isn't it, than in the studio.
But hello to all of our viewers on YouTube and elsewhere and our listeners on the podcast. We're glad that you can join us again. It has been a while since the last episode of the briefing for various reasons. We haven't been able to get together to do it, and there's been a fair amount for us to catch up on, and a lot that we could probably get through. I don't know where you think we should maybe start.
Well, it's funny enough because the last time we were together for a briefing was at Ellesmere Wood.
Right,
Great big trip back at the start of June.
Oh, that was a while ago actually, yeah.
The time after that, then we finally got together, was just this week, funnily enough, when we enjoyed a 8-hour round trip to Elgin, which was much more fun than it sounds, and that was for quite a special reason, because we were there for the official opening of the brand new Newton Nursery.
Yes, this is a state-of-the-art new tree nursery. Well, I say new nursery. There has been a tree nursery in Elgin there on that site since I think 1931.
Yep, exactly.
But this week was the official opening of the new facility, which has what is believed to be the largest greenhouse growing trees in the UK, and was created with 26.7 million pounds investment. So quite a big event, quite a big show for forestry in Scotland. It is a Forestry and Land Scotland site, and the First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, was there to open it all up and really big up the Scottish Government's commitment to forestry, which we can get into in a little bit. But do you want to shall we talk first of all about some of the details of this nursery itself and why it's so important for?
Yeah, so the nursery, obviously you mentioned, it's an FLS site, Forestry and Land Scotland site. So maybe first to start is that the stock that's grown here is only for the public estate in Scotland. So it's not going to go to private land, private planting projects. So that's really interesting. Now, the previous Newton Nursery site, which was just across the road, I think they reckoned it was doing about 7 million trees per year. Now, this new, as you say, state-of-the-art glasshouse is going to be capable in the future of doing up to 19 million trees per year. Now that's a huge sum. So
I think somebody said it was a 2,000% productivity increase that they're going to be able to have off the back of this. Okay. That's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, well, which sounds about right. I mean, that kind of figure tallies. And so at the moment, it's not quite there. It's doing about 5 million trees, I think they reckon, for this planting season.
But it's very new.
Exactly, it's very new. So it's barely, this is the first planting season. It's really going to have an effect. So yeah, those are the kind of headline numbers. In terms of how it's all put together, there's a few kind of let's say aces up the sleeve, which were really interesting to see. So first and foremost, you have all the kind of latest machinery. It's very, very machinery, very automated driven. Now, the reasons for that, you won't be surprised. It's the usual, lack of manpower, more efficient to use machines than human beings, which we've talked about and we all have concerns about, and don't want to belittle that, but let's put it to one side.
It's also about the quality and the consistency of the trees that they're actually growing.
Yeah. Exactly, which we'll kind of get to maybe in a second. So very automated. You've got the big glasshouse we have mentioned. It has the sort of freezer unit, which I think goes down to -21 Celsius, which will store the seeds that are going to be needed to grow the actual trees in the nursery. So all these different elements are really, really exciting. Now, It's going to be a mix of cell-grown and bare root stock. What is quite key is that a significant proportion of the trees are going to be grown in as far as we're aware, an industry-first approach, which they're calling tape for trees, which maybe you can expand on a wee bit.
Well, this is something that, and it's interesting. They're taking the lead from the horticulture sector. This is seeing technology and innovation that's happening in horticulture with vegetable and other plant planting, and bringing it across to the world of forestry. So this is a method by which seeds are planted in these
a ribbon almost, like a kind of wee ribbon.
A kind of ribbon that actually sort of protects the seed in a nutrient-dense soil, so that it can be planted and protected, and also can be sort of laid out in a very, very efficient and manner. I think is that about right? It's not.
That sounds about right.
Not the easiest thing to sort of describe without
being experts. And what we'll maybe do, I'll put it up there. We actually we have a video that's just dropped today as we record from that event, and in that, Bryony Hewitson. What was Bryony's surname? Anyway, Bryony from FLS, who now oversees the site, she actually did a very good explainer of how the technology works. But long story...
Watch that.
Yeah. Rather than us mumbling along.
The headline of it is that through this method, through using tape for trees and taking and using that to plant trees into the environment, they're going to be able to plant up to 1 million trees in a day. Per day,
yeah. Which is amazing. So the trees, as you say, they arrive in these wee ribbon boxes, they go into the glass house, they spend about 12 weeks there, or until they get to the roots get to 5 to 10 centimetres tall, and then they are planted, and they're planted using special machinery which comes from UK Planter Solution. Now we're going to hopefully speak to them. We've kind of spoken to them briefly since to do a bit more in depth on there, but it's a really interesting bit of tech.
Yeah.
And the benefit being that what I think was taking them 4 months to do, they can now do in just 2 weeks exactly. Yeah. So that means, as you kind of mentioned at the start, that means there's a much more uniformity about what's actually going in the ground, because what you would find, the stuff at the start of that planting season was very different to the stuff at the end. So, I mean, it's really exciting actually. As we understand that, it's like, may even be a world first in terms of a forestry application of this method of planting trees. So, yeah, really, really exciting, really interesting to see what difference that will make.
Yeah, and just interesting to get a tour of the facility for us to see how it's, what all the different sections of it, all the like you say, the cold storage, the seed stores, and the different kinds of trees that they're growing. As we said at the start, John Swinney was there, Scotland's First Minister, proud to be talking about the commitment to the long-term future of forestry in Scotland with this investment, and we got to introduce ourselves. I'm sure he's completely forgotten about us by now, but it was interesting to get to chat to him very briefly about forestry in Scotland. It would have been nice to have had a bit longer to...
yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be his... I mean, as the leader of the Scottish National Party, the leader of the government, his job really is to manage his own people and who each have their own responsibilities, and to provide a sort of a broader vision to the public. And so I suppose it wouldn't be... You can't expect him to be across every single line of forestry, but it would be nice to be able to challenge some of the stuff that he was saying with regard to the commitment to the future of, the commitment to the future of forestry, given that this investment would have been approved well before he was...
I think Fergus Ewing was still the forestry secretary when it was kind of getting initially spoken about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worth, as you mentioned, it wasn't like a long time, mainly because we were kind of behind STV, BBC, all the kind of the big boys, so to speak, who to be honest,
you would expect us to have been at the front of the queue.
Yes, given it's a forestry, and we were the ones asking the forestry questions. Really, everyone else was asking about, whatever.
Sturgeon's book.
Yeah, exactly, which was a good week for it. But I think it's maybe worth playing. You did ask him, you were doing the interview, you asked him directly about productive forestry in Scotland and the government's commitment to it. And I think it's maybe worth just, if we play that just now, to hear what he had to say.
We understand that in the Scottish Government, hence the decision that we've taken to invest £26 million in this facility so that there can be the capacity and the capability here in Murrayshire to fuel the growth of tree planting within Scotland, because that is necessary to achieve our climate action targets. It will also help us to boost and strengthen the rural economy.
So that's what he had. So that's what he says, saying, you know, that this government does understand and appreciate productive forestry, but this is coming after, well, the budget cuts that the industry is still recovering from, which was within, well, was certainly under the current forestry secretary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and it would be nice to sort of challenge whether you're really invested in the future of your nation's forestry when you are leaving it at the mercy of these snap decisions that we make. Yeah, we know there's budget pressures across government, but but forestry, I think, even more than other sectors, is one which suffers long-term ramifications from short-term financial decisions.
And this actually the perfect way to, as you've kind of hinted at there, you know, he's come out and said he supports productive forestry, but what's the actual reality of the situation? There's a few kind of strands we can pick at here. You know, you can have the sort of the feeling, the sentiment from contractors that you know, nature's maybe more favoured to productive forestry, which we'll get to maybe a bit more in a second. But one strand which we have the raw numbers for, which isn't just based on sentiment, are the planting stats. And since we last did a podcast, they came out, you know, UK wide as they do every year, and there's two ways you can spin it. So one way is UK wide. Whilst the number was down quite dramatically on 2020, the previous year, so in the previous year we planted about 21,000 hectares of woodland UK wide, which was a sort of modern day high. This year it was just under 16,000 now. Kind of the positives from it was that England, Wales, Northern Ireland generally all saw a rise. England, I think, created the most woodland it had done since 2003. So there was a lot of sort of progress made elsewhere. But that overall number was down, and that was almost single-handedly down to a dramatic drop in Scotland now. Remember last year in Scotland, they planted around about 16,000 hectares. This year that was actually down to 8,470 hectares, so that is a massive drop. It's a massive drop. It's below the 10,000 hectares of woodland that was pledged by John Swinney. It's only the second time in the last 6 years Scotland's fallen below 10,000 hectares. And the reason for it is really because of that budget cut you mentioned, the budget cut which affected that planting season. And you remember, I think, what was it, £32 million was cut from the forestry grant budget for the 24 planting season, the 23-24 planting season, so 24-25 planting season, sorry. So that was a huge figure. Now, some of that's been restored for the upcoming planting season in terms of the grants, so you know, we may see a kind of uptake again, but it was still primarily down to the decisions John Swinney and his government made. So you know, that what's he saying? What's the reality? What's actually happening on the ground?
Absolutely. And the question as well is one about productive forestry as well. And we've seen with the latest woodland creation statistics, the proportion of productive woodland versus your hardwoods or woodland for nature, you might call it, again, seems to be down. It's certainly worrying.
Scotland, it was the lowest level since 2018 in terms of conifer to broadleaf. You know, so for example, remember the UK-wide total was just under 16,000 hectares. Only, and sorry, I've got notes here because I don't remember these numbers off the top of my head, but the UK-wide conifer rate was just 5,680, and it was actually only 680 in England. So
And that's the wood,
reality.
that's the wood that we need for timber, for the construction industry, for house building, for the paper sector, for even things like wood fuel and that's where that's all coming from. Basically, the hard wood, that's the broadleaves that are being planted. If that ever goes into any kind of productive use, that's going to take a century or
potentially
or thereabouts. And so the stuff that we need for the future for our lifetime is not being planted. And John Swinney talked about how this government understands the importance of productive forestry, but whenever he was talking about the aims of and the result of woodland creation, he was talking about the desired outcomes for climate, for the rural economy, for I think nature and health and well-being.
Yep.
I can't recall him ever mentioning timber.
No.
Timber production. Bryony did, and we got some good soundbite out of her about the vital importance of why we need to plant trees for timber. But I'm not sure that is still that message is still being understood by people, not just in the Scottish government, but in government and by politicians in general. Which the question I was asked was whether politicians generally appreciate the importance of productive forestry, and it's not something that's, I think, still understood by the general.
No, which we'll maybe go into in a second. We can segue into that in a second, but just before we leave the stats and we leave the new nursery, so I mentioned that you can take those stats in many different ways. One other positive is that sort of just under 16,000 hectares was still the third highest this century. Improvement has generally been made in terms of what we're planting. Even just 10 years ago, I think the total was under 6,000 hectares UK-wide, so there is still improvement to be made. The flip side, I would say again, is that back in the 80s, we were planting quite regularly, 25,000 hectares. So we've never gone near that rate again, and that's, as you mentioned, that's what we need to kind of do. We already know there's going to be a softwood shortage, like that's indisputable. If we're going to meet the targets we want to get, that's indisputable. So it's interesting now, if this nursery, the Newton Nursery, does get up to its 19 million trees, 19 million trees, taking it roughly, it's obviously very rough. What do you plant per hectare? It's never a set science, but let's say roughly that could be anywhere up to about 12,000 hectares annually that could be planted in Scotland, on the Scottish public estate, which actually is maybe worth mentioning that from the Scotland total, just 650 hectares of that was actually on the public estate. So, it's still a very small proportion. I feel like it's still planting a very small proportion of what we actually need to do. And this was mentioned again by us, and it goes into all these issues. There was reasons for that. I think contractor, sort of lack of contractors, lack of people to actually do the planting was mentioned. Now, whether that's how true that is, I suppose, is people will debate. But the public estate is there. It's there to be used. It's just can we now take what's undoubtedly going to be a much larger supply, a much larger stock of trees, and can we turn that into reality? Because we do know that nurseries have planted more than they've been able to actually sell, more than they've been able to actually plant UK-wide. Situations
UK-wide where nurseries have been burning tens of thousands of, maybe even hundreds of thousands of trees, just to because there's nowhere for them to go. They were promised that they're told that we need this supply of stock, and then it doesn't materialise. So there's obviously a lot of much bigger issues that need to be resolved further down the line to actually get trees from the nurseries into the ground.
And maybe that then this takes us on to our sort of second big issue, which you mentioned just sort of briefing, just in passing rather, about that sort of disconnect between productive forestry and politicians, but also the public. And we've had, since we last spoke, we've had a kind of more concrete example of that disconnect. Now, this comes from Forest Research's sort of biannual public opinion of forestry survey, and there were some really interesting results in that, which kind of solidify what we're talking about.
The headline revelation is that the public is generally thinks forestry is a good thing. So that's good. They're not against.
Oh, our logo's gone off. Can maybe say I'll get it back on. There we go.
Okay, so they don't want all of the trees gone. Some people you talk, which is good, because sometimes some people you talk to have startling views on forestry, but generally the public is pro trees. But there's a lot of nuance in that, isn't there?
There is. So as you mentioned, pro trees, but generally pro trees for the quite obvious reasons. Now, that, you know, for example, the vast majority agreed woodlands are important places for wildlife. 3/3 of people surveyed UK-wide supported planting more trees to combat climate change.
Absolutely.
So that's UK-wide. Now, the UK-wide, it's kind of a bit complicated. The UK-wide stats are really just more of kind of general public opinion. They then have a separate Scotland and a separate Wales, separate Wales surveys, which kind of drill more into the detail. And again, if we look at Scotland, again, 93% of people listed at least one reason to publicly support forestry with cash, so to give forestry public cash. Again, the reasons listed were generally, you know, kind of supporting wildlife, supporting biodiversity, all these things which are good things, so we don't mistake us to not say that. But just 24% listed timber production in their kind of reasons for supporting forestry with public cash or supporting forestry in Scotland. Now, when you read that, you might initially think, and it's easy to kind of think or hope, okay, the reason for that is because you're linking it to public cash. We've had quite famously people thinking that shouldn't be the case anymore. We shouldn't give any public cash to productive forestry. Whole argument we don't need to necessarily get into today. But then let's look at Wales, and in Wales it was framed slightly differently. It was more rather about cash. It was more, why do you support woodlands, essentially? And just 15% mentioned timber production. So whichever way you frame it, it's less than a quarter of people in the UK surveyed see timber production as a key aspect of our woodlands. Now, that's the kind of tide where we are swimming against. So we maybe didn't learn much from this survey, but again, it just solidifies that opinion that feeling we have. It gives us actual raw data of that sentiment we have.
Yeah, and still struggling to get that message out there. There were certain aspects of this survey that they were sort of only asking certain questions in Scotland and didn't have comparable stuff in.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So there's a UK-wide survey which takes all the 4 nations. Might not actually be Northern Ireland, but anyway, it takes all mainland Britain for certain, and that's kind of more general about woodlands. That's less general about productive forestry. We have Scotland, which kind of delves into productive forestry. We have Wales, which delves in productive forestry. We don't have the equivalent in England, so it's hard to know what the situation is there, how people feel there. But I think it's safe to say we can imagine they'll be broadly quite similar.
So still a mountain to climb in making sort of people aware of the importance of timber production and all that we rely on our forests for, and how vital that is as well as part and parcel of the whole climate change agenda. But there was another survey that I saw recently, which was carried out by the paper industry across Europe. I think surveyed over 12,000 members of the public about attitudes towards deforestation, where the public was asked, what do you think is the leading cause of deforestation? And most people got it wrong. That it's thinking that a lot of people blaming construction, a lot of people blaming house building. And this again comes when people see that trees are being harvested. With our industry, they assume that if they're being lost forever, they're not being replanted, and this is the cause of deforestation. People not grasping at all that it's agriculture across the world which is typically the leading cause of deforestation. That was very low on the list. So the public perception again needs to be flipped to understand the reality. Something else that was that there was a general lack of support for trees being harvested. Again, this is like across Europe, so it's not just sort of UK attitude, but it's like people not supporting the use of trees in the paper industry. People saying that all paper products should be 100% recycled. I think, well, that's a noble aim, but have a think about it. That's not really viable. I remember going to a conference years ago with where someone was speaking from the paper industry, saying, in front of these issues, we can't really recycle toilet paper, for example. And he thought about it and said, well, maybe we could, but no one really wants to, because I mean, think about it. You're never going to be able to achieve. There's always has to be virgin materials involved in every aspect of these products that we make, and that we need. At the very least, we need toilet paper, and we will do until someone comes up with some remarkable invention. But yeah, for paper products and for house building construction, for all these different reasons, we need timber for, and people still don't really grasp the importance of it. One other thing they said in this...
Oh my goodness, there's more, John.
In this survey was that the amount of trees on new forestry that had been created in Europe was the equivalent of the landmass of Switzerland, which I would need to...
Is that big? Yeah,
but that's a big area.
Well, that's
pretty incredible.
Okay, yeah, that seems pretty good.
Yeah, but yeah.
Toilet paper, my goodness, what a tangent that was. But
am I wrong? Is toilet paper not important? You tell us in the comments.
Maybe it's time for a wee break, and we'll come back after.
Sure. I can see you're keen to just take a little breather.
Yeah, goodness.
In an era when we are bombarded with digital content of varying quality and accuracy, it's nice to be able to rely on the good old printed page. Subscribing to Forestry Journal's print edition offers an irreplaceable experience tailored for professionals, enthusiasts, and advocates for sustainable forestry. With a varied mix of analysis, interviews, and practical guidance in an easily digestible format, which also provides a welcome break from screen fatigue, the printed copy of Forestry Journal is a reliable companion at home, in the office, or out in the woods, far from Wi-Fi and decent phone signals. Whether for yourself, friends, or colleagues, a subscription to Forestry Journal's print edition is a focused, immersive experience sure to provide valuable information, thought-provoking opinion, and some light entertainment. By subscribing, you're supporting independent, high-quality multimedia journalism that champions the forestry sector and benefits the industry as a whole. With convenient delivery direct to your door, you never have to worry about missing an issue. Plus, as a print subscriber, you'll be granted premium access to all our digital content for no extra cost. Whether you're a professional looking for the latest industry updates or an enthusiast passionate about the future of our woodlands, Forestry Journal keeps you informed, inspired, and engaged. A Forestry Journal print subscription isn't just a magazine. It's a vital resource and a commitment to staying informed in an industry which shapes our environment and our future. Don't miss out. Subscribe today.
So one last thing that's worth mentioning before we go is that we have been out since going to Elmia in Sweden, going to that forestry show, which we very much enjoyed. I got to go to Forexpo in the south of France, which is another big forestry show, attended by all of the big players such as John Deere, Komatsu, Ponce, and many other exhibitors with a huge amount of working demonstrations of forest machinery. You can read a full report in the August issue of Forestry Journal, which if you haven't received yet is probably because you're not subscribing, so you should really get that sorted. But we will also be having several video packages from all the stuff that I saw coming up on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks, including our first look at John Deere's 8-wheel 1470, thank you, 1470 H, which was a very big draw. for everyone attending the show. That was a really big highlight, and just sort of generally some coverage for generally Forexpo, because I've never had the opportunity to go before, and it's a big show which innovation is at the heart of it, and also promoting forestry as a sector as an industry to the youth of France, which is a really key part of the show. Anyway, look out for that. If you haven't got the magazine yet, then it's probably because you need to be subscribing, which you can do by visiting forestryjournal.co.uk, where we should just say that we have taken a bit of a break because of various issues we haven't been able to get together, but we're going to be committing to doing one of these a month for the rest of the year, catching up with the latest stories in forestry. Probably, I don't know if we'll be back here next time.
Certainly if it's not going to be built, that would be...
Yeah, so probably be back in the forest the next time you see us. And we look forward to talking to you again when we do. But until then, bye for now, I guess.
Cheerio.